Right. So this is a panel you've been wanting since the beginning. These are the people buying the enterprise solution. So we're going to talk about how to make that happen and try to give you some way to decode large international companies, how they buy solutions, software from US tech companies. But before we dive into that, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself to the audience, give a little background about what you're doing or what you've done, which I think is relevant in some cases, in about a minute so that people understand where you're coming from.
So I'm Claude. I am actually not the VP of Innovation. I am handling the high-tech sector for North America for Capgemini. I joined the company about 2 years ago. Before that, I was the CIO and the CEO of 2 companies over in Europe. Before, I spent about 10 years with HP here in the Bay Area, and before I worked for Accenture about 7 or 10 years.
My name is ODILE ROUJOL. I spent a big part of my career in beauty, in the beauty industry at L'Oréal. So nothing to do with what we discussed today. And the second part of my career at Orange, a big telco company in EMEA, and my latest job was Chief Strategy and Data Officer. And now I live in San Francisco.
I'm the only one who does not speak French up here. That's my claim to fame. But my name is Steve Rowland. I'm with Datastax. We're a company based here in the Bay Area. I've been in the enterprise software space my whole life, everything from $2 billion software companies like BMC Software to smaller companies like Apogee. Have built businesses internationally and also lived internationally, lived in Asia-Pac for 2 years and ran the whole Asia-Pac region as well.
Good afternoon. I'm LUC VANDEVELDE. I've spent most of my life running or being part of big corporations like Kraft, Vodafone, Carrefour, Marks Spencer. And I'm running my own private equity fund since 2003 out of London.
Well, thank you. So that's let's do that differently. Let's start with the don'ts, the bad stories or the horror stories, just to change a bit the dynamic. So maybe if each of you can find a good bad story to kind of illustrate what people shouldn't do when they approach companies or expand internationally. So maybe let's start with kind of the other end, so Luc and move afterwards.
I guess one of the great lessons for most companies who are trying to get in touch with or work with large corporations is to assume that those large corporations know what they want or that they even understand the kind of services that you are providing or will be providing to them. And the biggest lessons I've ever learned goes back to a Pebble Beach experience some time ago. Who of you remembers the 29th of June of 2007? Nobody. It was the launch of the iPhone. Now, who remembers the 26th of February 2007? Nobody. Well, it was my 56th birthday. And on that birthday, with the Vodafone board, we were visiting the West Coast and got to see all the great and famous of the tech industry in the United States, of which one of them was called Steve Jobs, who was presenting us in the afternoon. And the title of his presentation was about consumer marketing and insight of consumers, which was a bit of a weird topic for him to talk about. So it took about 2 or 3 hours for him to set up a desk like this, which we were not allowed to see. And finally got to the presentation, and the desk looked like what was going to be an iPhone. And the screen behind us looked like the screen of an iPhone. And for about an hour, Steve Jobs was telling us all the things that this iPhone was going to do once he launched it. Quite impressive, I must say, as you probably all know since then. But at the end of the presentation, we asked him, I said, what's exactly behind this? Can you show us the real thing? He said, no, I can't show the real thing. This is on a Mac that I'm projecting. And he said, well, when are you going to come out with the real thing? He said, soon. He said, well, what's missing to get to the real thing? He said, oh, a whole lot of engineers are going to have to work hard to get this to the market. So we said to him, okay, well, why don't you come back when the real thing is existing? And we, believe it or not, as Vodafone, there decided to forego the exclusivity of the iPhone worldwide. That must have cost us many billions of dollars. So just to tell you that don't think that your customers know what it is that they want, that they need. And so I guess it's probably one of the greatest lessons I've ever had in trying to make sure that you communicate well with your audience. So even Steve Jobs didn't manage that.
That's $1 billion mistake.
Yeah,
that's
a big one.
That's a pretty good one.
You asked me to come up with something big, so this is big.
You set the bar so high, though.
Yeah. So a few million mistake, maybe just a...
Yeah, exactly. I think from my vantage point, really building out businesses internationally is going into markets too soon. So not really having a clear understanding of, one, is it a repeatable model? How do your customers buy? Who are your customers? And when do you go there quickly? I think people get very enamored. So in the past, I've had the opportunity to expand too quickly, and then you get diluted too quickly, and then you have too many markets to try to understand and manage to, and it becomes quite a tax on the business. So that's probably the biggest mistake I've observed in building business internationally.
ODILE?
So I know I've got Salesforce friends in the room. My biggest mistake would have been as a new chief data officer to have put together a meeting with the CTO at Orange, because I was seduced by what I'd seen in San Francisco. And the guy that came in the meeting was not at all at the level of what I expected. So each time the CTO, dealing with billions of dollars every year in investment, was asking questions on the technical point of view, the guy was saying, smart question. I will ask my team in San Francisco. I was very embarrassed. So happy Orange and Salesforce were together. But I would say my biggest advice would be, when you think global, think also local with the ecosystem, and have rock and roll stars as salespeople.
All right, so I'm not going to explain a big mistake. I'm just going to give a small advice. I'm going to say that if you want to expand internationally, you're going to have to use local people. That is the big mistake that some corporations do, is to send a couple of their local people to go chase a new market outside, and in fact you don't understand the culture of the people. You don't understand what's going on locally. And the best way, I think, to make a mistake is to believe that your people that you trust very much, that have your culture, are going to be the proper people to sell these things outside of your own market. The best solution is probably to partner with some people, to partner with some firms, some companies, sometimes your size, sometimes bigger than you, in order to go in these markets with the proper knowledge of what's happening on the market, the culture. And I've been exposed to multiple cultures since I spent half of my career in France and half of it here. I'm going to say the culture is extremely different. And I would say for my company, I see that what's happening here is very, very different from what's happening in Paris. The people that are driving the market in Paris, or the marketing pitch in Paris, are absolutely not relevant with what is happening here, and vice versa. I think what we do here is very different from what's happening in Paris. However, this is the same company. We're selling the same type of solutions. So again, it's a matter of finding the right people locally that understand the culture, what the market is expecting. Mistake would be to believe that, again, you can ship your own people over there and they're gonna thrill and deploy, where in a culture they don't understand.
So let's go back to the I would say power map in big companies. One of the I've been in the sales side for a long time, and you always struggle especially as a startup where you don't have all the resources to understand kind of the power map. Should you talk to the CIO, the CTO, the chief digital officer, the chief innovation officer, whatever new things. How do you, if you have a company with a few million revenue, how do you start? Is there better ways to do that on what doesn't work? From ODILE, you've been exposed to that on the buying side. So, what's your experience with dealing with U.S. tech startups?
I will say it depends of the company, for sure. I will say try to find the champion. The champion can be the chief data officer, the chief digital officer, the chief marketing officer, or someone in charge of a budget in e-commerce or sales. Most of the time, it's someone that works very well with his peers and that has the data. I've got many companies I met in the Silicon Valley that were saying to me, I had the proof of concept and I don't know why. I have no news, and these people had no budget and not the data. So try to have people that have budget, data, and a trust relationship with their peers.
Luc?
I think the biggest mistake you can do is to address yourself to the wrong guy. I mean, and again, it depends as to whether you identified the need of your potential customer. I remember introducing some of the NextWorld portfolio companies to Vodafone and other operators in Europe, where I was witness of a dialogue which was completely irreal, in the sense that I think it may have been Datastax, to be honest.
No, I don't think that.
Talking to the CMO of Vodafone, who was interested in a consumer-oriented solution, and the guy from over here was talking about a technical solution. But the two didn't fit. So I think you really got to do your homework and figure out who is your customer and who is going to take your product forward.
So, Claude, you used to buy a lot of technology.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of the fence, which is interesting. I mean, I'm going to say you have to be relevant, and it's related to, look what you said about, you need to know who you want to talk to, that is the relevance of your product, your solution compared to their problem. Because if you are not relevant, it's not worth it. That's an obvious thing, but you have to do this. The second thing is I think what ODILE you said, which is what is the right level of relationship you want to create in the company. And it's another obvious thing that I'm saying here, but you don't want to talk to the CEO about your interesting product or interesting solution if he's not a technical guy, or if your solution is not what he has in mind at one point of time. You need to find what is the right relationship. And then after, you need to focus. I heard that in one other panel. You need to focus on this relationship. That is, the risk for you would be to expand your relationship inside the company to people that eventually don't have budget, are not interested by those solutions, or not even on the right level for them to understand your solution. So you're going to have to target, again, the relevance, the right level of people, and they need to have the budget in order to eventually go deeper.
Just let me push it further with you. So you were a CIO, but this salespeople usually think, I should avoid the CIO. So what do you think? Now that you've changed side, can you tell us the truth?
It's interesting. Now that I changed side, I would have loved sometime the CIO would pick up the phone when I call them, but they don't. The reason is 90% of the CIO's time is about managing his own budget, his own team, or whatever. He's not necessarily focusing on innovation. You rarely find CIOs that are really have enough bandwidth to think about innovation, new products, new solutions, and things like that. Most of the time, the solutions are coming from their team, not from themselves, which is, I think, a mistake, but that would take another afternoon to think about that. But anyway, so you don't necessarily want to target the CIO. You want to target, again, the relevant person inside his team that is interested by your solution, or you would solve one of his problems through your solutions.
One of the key questions most startups have is, should you go through proof of concept, pilot, which any sales leader usually think it's a bad idea. And, Steve, what do you think about that? Do you love POC for 6 months?
Generally, we like to do POCs for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of tying off on that last question, which I think is a really important one. I think it also depends on what you're selling. Like, what are you bringing to market? If you're bringing a product that's a $5,000 ASP and it's easily consumed, you're not going to go access the CIO. If you're selling an application, you're obviously going to go to the line of business to try to provide that outcome. We're providing infrastructure that enables an outcome. So today, there isn't one person or two people any longer. There's generally consensus-oriented buying that's happening across those buying decisions. The developer is critically important. The infrastructure architect in IT or in the line of business is important. The product manager who's developing that product for the line of business. The line of business executive who's trying to achieve that outcome. So the dynamic of who you have to interface with to be successful has gotten incredibly more complex than it was just 3 years ago. And the amount of information that's online now before they even engage you. So getting back to what POCs and where you are, no one likes POCs, nor does the customer, by the way, because it just wastes time and resources and energy, right? So there's other ways to prove technology. We actually have what we call a proof of technology to show them the technology and how it works. Or we do pre-production pilots, which gets much further down the path of bringing something into production that's going to be of real value. So we try to avoid those. at all costs.
So, ODILE, what do you think? Did you used to do POC, love them,
The
or?
reverse.
Of course.
I love POC, but short ones,
Yes.
3 months. Not for testing the products, because most of the time I was quite sure of the company I was introducing, but to make sure that the team, as a company, we were aligned and having the same goals. And once the metrics were defined, it was quite easy to have a meeting with all the co-sponsors and then to scale, in fact. So I was a big fan of proof of concept, but more for my own culture as a corporation than for the startup.
You bring up a really good point, though, because that's you driving alignment across the team. Where we get into trouble on POCs is when it's a developer or a low-level person that just wants to try it, and you're not aware of that, then that becomes a problem.
That will be wrong.
Yeah.
So, Claude, any additional comments on?
I don't know. I am balanced between loving them and hating them. I think they have to be at the right level. You said it. It's like if you end up developing a POC for a small developer somewhere, which you've not checked if the guy has the buying power, is well connected to the rest of the organization, it's probably not worth it, right? However, for some corporations, it works as change management process to make sure that everybody is looking at it. When you bring something which is very new, a very new way to proceed, a new way to approach a solution, it's probably appropriate to come with something which is very relevant to exactly what the business case is as a proof of concept. But I would not advise you to spend too much time on it. So it depends how your solution is organized. If your solution is flexible, easy to put some parameters to have something that fits the business need, the use case, then go do it. If it's something that 3 months, for example, for me it's a long time, especially for a small company.
Okay, let's talk about international expansion. So, Luc, you've run companies globally with footprints in tens of countries. How do you deal with this company? Do you want to go at the local subsidiary level? Do you go to the headquarters? How do you work with this company? Because it's always a mystery how you tackle these giant beasts.
First of all, there is no such thing as international expansion. As you rightly pointed out, it's a country-by-country expansion. I mean, there's as much difference between Germany and the UK as there is between the UK and the United States. So to think about international as a strategy, I think makes no sense. And for many, but your products, though, are, at least from what I've seen today, are mostly universal. They are applicable to the whole world. So how do you get then best into international? I would recommend to go with multinationals, to the same extent that I think that you're working with multinationals here. If you have a product that appeals particularly, you think, to the luxury automobile industry, go to Germany. If you have a product that is very likely to be accepted by the telecom industry, go to UK and see Vodafone. So I think because they will cover the world, the international world. And also, importantly, the decision-making will be done where their headquarters is 9 times out of 10. So don't go to BMW UK because they will not be able to make any decisions.
In your experience, have you seen countries which are more receptive to innovations than others?
Yeah. I think I would join the previous comments. The further you go east, the more difficult it becomes. And that's not just accepting technology. I think there is a barrier of communication which makes it more difficult. And I think to sell anything to the Chinese is a lot more complicated than selling to a Brit. Or Japanese even to that extent. So I guess Europe is obviously easier for any American to do business in than Far East. Other than that, I don't know. Middle East is not to be underestimated. I'm also, amongst the many things I do, I'm chairman of a company in Dubai, and they are rapidly picking up pace and investing heavily in new technologies. So it's certainly a part of the world that understands the US culture. Everybody speaks English, so it's a relatively easy market to go to.
Steve, how did you, at Datastax or previous experience, how did you scale? Which country did you go first? How did you feel about international? You said that you have a few regrets sometimes going too early, but how do you build the multi-countries as per Luc image kind of organization?
So first of all, it takes a lot of discipline, right? Particularly when you have new innovative technology. and you get requests from all over the world. In Asia-Pac, as an example, they have very low barriers of entry. They have no legacy hangover infrastructure, and they're innovating now at speed. So you get a lot of inquiries, so it gets really exciting. Wow, we can go to Malaysia, and we can go to Singapore, and we can go to India, and we go to all these other countries, and before you know it, you're in 50 different countries. So it takes a lot of discipline, that's the first thing, and it goes much back to what Luc was saying was, where do you go and why do you go? The natural expansion for a US-based company is to go to Europe, but you have to win the core markets of Germany, UK, and France. So the approach that I've always taken is to establish what are those tier 1 markets, tier 2 markets that you might serve with partners, and what are the markets you're not going to serve. So if you're in India today, or if you're in Indonesia, and you hit our website and say, I'm interested in your product, we will respond with, thanks very much, we're not established to do business in your market today. To serve your market, come to our academy, learn about our products. Here are some partners that you might interface with, but we will not go in those markets because we want to succeed. You have to succeed in the core markets first before you expand, or you'll get so diluted you won't be successful. So it's a very, very purposeful approach and progressive approach in how you expand.
Claude, maybe from your Capgemini experience or HP experience, you work with software companies, tech companies. How do you work with them expanding international? Do you keep them local, or do you bring them to Europe, as Capgemini is very strong all over Europe?
I mean, you need to pick, well, I'm going to say almost the same thing. You need to pick your battles. You need to probably go with the language is a huge barrier. It's a huge issue. I mean, so if you are a US company, UK is an obvious market. But I mean, India sometimes is a good market. Depends if you want to go in which market you want to get in India. But let's say English speaking, you would go there because this is easier for you to go to. Then after you get into eventually people that don't speak your language, don't have the same culture you have, in order for you to get into second tier type of market. But I would heavily depend on local partners that know the local market. Especially in either it works in B2B or B2C, it's the same issue. If you have people that needs to know your market, that's the way you're going to expand.
But how much would you expect the product or the solution to be customized? Because, this language is one, but, I think everybody's trying to keep the interface in English typically, at least at first level. So how, when you partner with tech companies, do you have criteria where you say, we would like you, we need you to do this, and that? Otherwise, we won't take you to Germany or whatever.
Well, it depends what kind of product or service you have. If you look at product, when I was in HP, we would localize the product to whatever the market would be. And sometimes you have specific products per country because that's what they need. They need some smaller disk drive or bigger screen or whatever. The keyboard obviously is different. So it's going to be specific and localized. What you have to think about is how you're going to manage your supply chain to make sure you can deliver with this level of customization with the same cost on your side. When it's a service, it's a little bit easier. When what we sell at Capgemini, we sell solutions which are customized to the customer. Not that for example, if you implement an ERP, it is not that you're going to customize the ERP, but the solution you offer to the customer has to fit his business. So it is customized.
Steve, how have you dealt with that, apart from refusing to do business in some places?
I didn't say refusing, just at the right time. You make it sound so bad.
No.
Yeah, I think it depends on the technology you're selling. So the technology we sell is very innovative. It's brand new technology. And so what you find is that many of the people leveraging our technology are younger people. And so language, in some cases, is easier in English, even in countries like Japan. You would think that you have to localize everything for Japan. Well, it depends on your market. In the last company I worked for, we localized documentation. We did all of our communication in Japanese, but the UI interface was still in English. We're in Japan today. We're having the same experience that younger Japanese people are really good in English in some cases. So I think it depends on the market you're going into and understanding who you're selling to and who's going to actually use your technology. But if you're going to go into a major market, you do have to think about what localization looks like and how do you sustain that.
And regarding the channel, do you use global partners like Accenture, Capgemini globally, or do you just focus on the whatever, local guys who are going to be deeper into some markets? How do you adjust your go-to-market?
Yeah,
so be careful what you're going to say.
So I love Capgemini. I mean, Capgemini, we use Capgemini. Well, it all depends on the market, right? So we actually partner with Capgemini as an example in certain European markets. They do extremely well. But you'll also find Accenture better in other markets if you look at the big SI. So, and CLAUDE would probably, hopefully support this. It just depends on how they're structured in those countries. And then many times we'll use local partners depending on what we're trying to accomplish in that market.
ODILE, what is your experience? What's the best way for even mid-sized US company? What's the best way to be referenced or kind of acknowledged? Is it just the branding, or the local partner, the language? How when you had to choose vendors, what goes in your mind to deciding to go further?
I will have the image of meeting a spouse, or husband, partner, or wife, and to keep the idea to have a trust relationship from the beginning. And when you have a partner, you need to meet the family and the friends. So you need to understand the ecosystem around the corporation that you target, in fact. Most of the time, they've got agencies, they work with Google, Facebook, Twitter. They work with plenty of big platforms. So if you know your place, and you at every layer of the company, for Orange it was 7 layers, it's like a sandwich approach. You try to have this trust relationship and to be reliable about the safety, the security of the data for sure, but also making sure that people understand where you go and how you can improve the performance, and you've got the user and customer in mind. Then I don't have the simple answer, but then you have created something that can be a long-term relationships.
As a kind of last theme, I'd like us to move to which is related to both the, let's call that open innovation. A lot, I think people here in Silicon Valley sees a lot of international group coming. Is that, how do you leverage that? How do you make that useful as both sides, on the buying side, on vendors? Our innovation team a good entry point? How do you navigate? How do you leverage all these? At NextWorld we do a lot of these things, but making it happen afterwards is not necessarily the most obvious things, depending. So, ODILE, you want to start as?
That's a stretch for most corporations, because open innovation is the reverse of, for them, reliability and what they control, in fact. So it takes a lot of time, contrary to what we could think. So I would say it's very close to changing softly the culture, and to have a lot of meetings, mentoring, and to be open, and not just about Hadoop or open innovation with tools that are open. So I know that one of the next panel is about AI. I think there is a lot of work as communication and aligning people about a new culture, in fact.
So Claude, I'm sure you see a lot of international group coming here.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about what my answer is going to be, but besides, it depends, like what we say from the beginning. No, I'm going to say that...
You've used all your joker now. You need to answer.
I've been exposed to in both worlds, I've been exposed to companies that came to me as new companies, innovating companies, trying to sell into me as a big customer, or me being a partner that can sell with them to some customers. In both cases, what I have seen is time. It takes a lot of time for you to be able to get in front of the right people and sell to them. And I'm amazed to see, how, as a small company, how your sales cycle is small in your mind compared to our buying cycle or our sales cycle. Typically, Capgemini, to make a deal with a customer, it takes minimum 3 months and maximum 18 months. So it's a long sales cycle. And in my previous corporation, in order to acquire something completely new out of nowhere, it was kind of the same time frame, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, even more. For you guys, it's too long. Most of the time it is too long. So I think the only way for you to be able to engage as an innovation company into a big group is, again, to find what is the partner you're going to partner with, which can replicate, to multiplicate your time frame, and being able to create the volume that's going to enable you to be able to be present in 3 months, in 6 months, or 9 months from now with your product or your solution.
Steve, because I know you do that a lot with us, and but so how do you leverage this thing? How do you tie back the work you do here with corporate coming and the local team and making that actionable?
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of keying off of what Claude was just saying as well, I think one of the things that's changed dramatically for software vendors, the reason that we feel like it's a shorter sales cycle is because companies are doing so much work before they even contact you any longer, right? I mean, in the past, they would call the sales team to engage. Today, you have communities, you have blogs, you have all sorts of things that can be, you have open source. There's a lot of investigation that can happen before they even ever contact you as a vendor. And then all of a sudden you say, wow, my sales cycle is so long. That's because you didn't have visibility to what was happening 7, 8, 9, 10 months before. That's really challenging for a software company today if you don't get engaged in that early investigative stage that you used to have visibility to. So really important to engage the more modern ways to engage companies, either through open source or freemium models or community or education or whatever the case may be. That's a really important point. The other part that we struggle with in highly innovative technologies today is that the skill set that exists in companies around new technologies it's small. And so part of what takes time is people understanding, how do I use this? When do I use this? What's the right way to apply it? What's the right use case or not the right use case? And the more you can get engaged in that is really important in speeding that up.
Maybe as a kind of conclusion, Luc, could you give us you've been board member in many of the biggest company. What's your view as a board member about innovation and engaging with Silicon Valley, which is, you said what Vodafone came here and so on. So, is that useful? How does that tie back to what you've seen at NextWorld and other things?
I think there's an incredible demand of big corporations to better understand what's happening here. I think I learned more in the week that I was here than I learned during 12 years with Vodafone from technology innovation on the West Coast. And I think the kind of initiatives that NextWorld is taking, whereby they bring companies to this part of the world and then organize a whole series of meetings with very targeted meetings, I think that's a wonderful idea. So my advice would be for those of you who are looking at fundraising, make sure that you get NextWorld capital in your investor base because you can benefit from that.
Well, thank you. That's really kind of you.
Nice way to end there.
Well, I think we're going to stay on that word. I think that
I'm an LP and an advisor to the group, so.
Yes, full disclaimer, yes. Well, thank you very much, Thiel, Luc. Thank you very much to the four of you. Join me in giving a round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.